I wanted to get your take on this. The things we discussed at that forum were an increase in private sector credit risk sharing by the GSEs, including a timeline to ramp up the offerings, the creation of a truly common securitization platform which allows for issuance of mortgage-backed securities other than the GSEs, and the development of a common residential mortgage-backed security by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And I thought I would just give you the floor right now to discuss how this might bring private sector capital back into the market and how we might work together to achieve these goals as a kind of a building block.
Congressman Royce, of course, appreciate your efforts on this issue of housing finance reform. Housing finance reform has been it's been a long and winding road, I think it's fair to say, but the administration is supportive of housing finance reform, and in fact, I think there's agreement on some of these issues. The President has made very clear that he does have an interest, I think like all Americans do, in taking taxpayers off the hook in the event, God forbid, that we did experience the same kind of housing crisis that we just went through. Agreed that we can find ways to introduce more private capital into the market. My hope is that in there we'll find a way to ensure that people of modest means who are responsible are able to get access to credit. And so with respect to proposed legislation, I think there's some common principles that are the foundation to build on. And we look forward to working with you. Well,
the question that I was going to try to drive to was the idea that GSEs increasing their risk-sharing activities in the form of volume of offerings and percentage of risk sharing. That would be a big step to bring private capital in. Certainly the Common Securitization Platform, that's, you know, that idea you're familiar with, and making that available for the private sector to come in as well, I think would be helpful. And I was trying to listen.
Yeah, I'm very willing to have conversations about that and build on legislation. We're hopeful that, of course, the ball is in Congress's court.
Well, let me then go to another question, Mr. Secretary, and that's that headline I saw, banks cede FHA market share to thinly capitalized non-banks. So we do have a situation where the FHA market share for large banks has recently been cut in half from 61% to 33%. And I know that is a concern. Non-banks have increased now. They were 24%. You know, now a year later they're 51%. So, or several years later. So, is this troubling? And do you think legal uncertainty maybe is part of the problem in terms of getting the traditional lenders more involved here? And what about the need for a greater certainty around the rep and warranty framework here? Have you been looking at that as a way of maybe bringing capital back in?
The answer to that is yes, that we are looking at that. We believe it makes sense to take reasonable steps to create more business certainty for lenders. I know this is something that Director Watt at FHFA has worked on, is working on now. That is something that we are working on with something we've called Blueprint for Access to Credit. We hear from lenders about the uncertainty that does exist regarding potential liability, and so we're working on that, and we look forward to being able to create, I hope, greater certainty that will help open up the credit box reasonably for responsible Americans to get access to credit.
You know, one of the CEOs that I know was interviewed on this said, if you want to stick with the program of putting back anytime, anywhere, whatever, that's fine. We're just not going to make these loans, and we're going to be there's going to be a whole bunch of Americans that are underserved in the mortgage market. I think that's the part of this that is concerning. There have been some ideas put forward in terms of you know, how to adjust this and handle it. But given the percentage of erosion here in market share, and especially the fact that it's thinly capitalized non-banks that are coming in, I think it needs to be addressed. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Time of the gentleman has